So anyway, I think those of you that are on here know me. My name is Frank Saladis. Been involved with PMI since 1990. I was president of the New York City chapter from 1991 through 2001, and decided I think that I'll try it one more time and got elected to be president-elect in 2015. So our presentation today will be on obtaining and sustaining volunteer leaders. So this is my introduction. This is the way we'll begin it. This is how the presentation will go in terms of content. Just a few welcome words and some introductions. Then we'll talk a little bit about the challenges. And since we have a kind of a small group here, it'll be fairly easy to address your questions. So I'll be checking questions as we go through the material. And those of you that are interested, we are recording this, and also I will make these slides available to any of the PMI chapters and chapter officers that might be interested in using this to help them work with their leaders, their volunteers, and people that they're working with on their projects in the chapter. So we'll talk about some techniques and strategies for recruiting. I have some pretty good information about developing a plan to actually get volunteers, and then I put together a number of tips for successful strategies and things like that. So this is what we need to think about. Okay, most chapter leaders, most organizations are looking for ways to grow. Okay, and in order to do that, the chapter leaders have to develop new ideas all the time. We have to enhance programs, and what we're really trying to do is engage members. I sent a note to Judy in PMI, Judy Brennan in PMI last week, and I asked her if she could send me what the top 5 strategies are for chapters when they put together their strategic plan. What are the top 5 things that they're looking at? And what she sent back was something interesting. She said the overarching goal was engagement of members, And anything that we do in the chapter basically would be associated with engaging our members. Now, I think there's maybe a little bit more to that, but if we don't have engaged members, then we certainly won't get volunteers. And if we don't have volunteers, it won't be long before you don't have a chapter. So it's important for us to have a very, very strong volunteer recruitment and retention program. So in order to do that, and I've seen this too in many chapters, you have leaders that are highly enthusiastic. They have that sincere commitment, and that, I believe, is what it will take to attract volunteers and actually grow the chapter. When you see the leadership making such a commitment and showing this high level of energy and excitement about being part of it. And I've been with the PMI for a very long time, and I see that sense of excitement when you go to a Leadership Institute meeting and things like that. And you know, the energy is incredible. What we want to do is we want to get that energy that seems to build at these leadership meetings and bring that back to the various chapters and use that energy to get people to really want to step up to a volunteer position. Now, as far as volunteers go, what we have to focus on is attitude. And I've done a bunch of research on it, and this statement here: generally, recruiting is not difficult. There are people who are waiting for an opportunity to contribute. And you know what? I believe that's 100% true, but I don't think many leaders are actually thinking that way. If you have the attitude of, I can't imagine that someone would volunteer for this, well, then we probably won't get any volunteers. So our goal is to have this positive attitude, all the things that the chapter can do, all the things that PMI does, you know, why it's beneficial to belong and to do these kinds of things and get some self-satisfaction out of the contributions that are made. And what we have to do is set these very, very clear expectations. And if we do that, then we should kind of show a vision of what's going to happen in the future, where we would like to be, some of the programs. It's very likely that people will want to join up and participate. If members don't have time, and this is really key. I think that, you know, I read this a few times, and we have to really understand this. Every time they say yes to someone who's asking for a volunteer, they're basically saying no to their family, friends, work, and more. So if we're going to get people involved in volunteering, then we have to show that it is absolutely positively valuable to them, so that they would make the time and balance a little bit of this volunteer work with their family and their friends and other things. So we have to do things like it says here, showing up for meetings, volunteering, to be very, very attractive to create this perceived high value for members. And I think that the key is to think about this high value for members, high value for members. And the other thing, of course, is to make sure that whatever we do, it is relevant, and we have to spell it out for them. That's one thing I've learned over time, is that when volunteers step up, they're going to want to know specifically, what am I going to be doing? And they're going to have it spelled out. They really want to make sure that, so that they can ask the right questions and therefore determine if they have the time and the skills to actually do that work. Now, this is a caution, and I think this is really important because I've also seen this in the past in various places. It says, don't make volunteering look like a backup plan. Oh, I don't really want to do it. Why don't we just get a volunteer to do it? You know, since nobody else will, let's get a volunteer to do it. And that in itself is going to be a real deterrent. So let's make sure that we're not creating busy work and things that do not seem to be significant, or that we're just going to basically hand them off to someone because they're not very interesting. That's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So let's make sure that we're giving people that meaningful work to do. Now, when we say meaningful work, it has to be very clearly defined, and if we don't provide that meaningful work, if we don't follow up with people, if we don't ask them questions and get feedback, then what we'll have is what we'll call the revolving door. And I've talked to volunteers very recently about that in some other chapters that feel that, you know, I stepped up to volunteer, I didn't hear from anyone for a period of time, so I just left. And the issue here is, you know, why do they become disillusioned? And for the most part, to tell you the truth, they become disillusioned because we ask people to volunteer, they step up to volunteer, and then we don't give them anything, or the work that we give them is very, very, you know, menial work. So everything that we have to do, we have to tie together to value, just like in any business. One of the things that we should do, and this is really important, is that if you're getting this people leaving, this revolving door, is to stop the recruiting until we look at why we're having a problem with the retention of volunteers in the first place. So why would we want to bring in new volunteers when we have people exiting almost as fast as they're coming in? So let's stop the recruiting and sit down and ask ourselves, okay, what is it that's happening that is causing this problem? And it's standard project management when it comes to a problem. What you want to do is a root cause analysis. You want to take some steps and find out clearly what the real causes are, so that we apply the appropriate solutions. I think that that's really, really going to be important. Okay. Now, once we've set the stage, and we know that we need volunteers, and I don't know any PMI chapter that doesn't need volunteers and is always looking for new volunteers, but what we have to have is a strategy for success. And I think that these items are important. These mandates for chapters. Number one is to identify the needs of the organization stakeholders, and that is, you know, your members, your clients, your volunteers, people who are staff members, they're supporting the organization, sponsors, the general project management community, people that would be attending meetings, things like that. So that's one thing. Then mobilize the volunteer resources in your chapter to meet those needs. In order to mobilize the resources, we in fact have to have a good, solid base of volunteers that we can then deploy to the appropriate programs. And then the third part, which is about leadership, is the motivating and inspiring, which is helping volunteers to energize, helping them through problems, giving them some coaching, some mentoring, and so on, and providing absolutely true and authentic leadership. These are the things that we need to do as chapter officers, and I think that's what the volunteers actually expect. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do throughout this presentation, since it's a small group, is to invite some questions. And Kay Weiss, who happens to be, I think, stepping back into an officer position in the Rochester PMI chapter out in Minnesota, she also helps me technically with some of these items for the webinar, and we may be able to promote a few people up to actually provide us with some information verbally through a microphone. So we might be asking you to maybe step up and talk about that a little bit later on. So strategies for success. What we want to do is we want every volunteer to have a great experience working with your organization. And the only way you're going to find out about that, by the way, is to get some feedback. And I did something recently, and I'm getting some interesting feedback. I sent out, I believe it was 7 questions. It's not really a survey, but 7 questions that I sent to the volunteer leaders and volunteers asking for information about their experience as volunteers. And I also included not only, what contributions did you make, but one of my questions also was, what legacy will you leave? And I even asked questions about what's working extremely well for you, what did you gain from it, but what also were the problems? And I got some very interesting responses. So bottom line, biggest lesson learned here is that every volunteer should have a great experience working with your organization. We have people, when they finally leave and they say, I have other things to do, they should walk away saying, wow, what a great experience. Okay. Part of what we can do is conduct what I call it a leadership SWOT analysis, but you can also do a SWOT analysis for your chapter to find out, what strengths do you have as an organization. And you may have some very, very strong leaders. You may have some very excellent programs and things like that. But what are the weaknesses? And one of the weaknesses may be that you don't have a very good recognition program for volunteers, or maybe you don't have a clearly defined program for volunteers or something like that. Where are the opportunities? Well, in PMI, the way I see it, if you really think about it, PMI as an organization, when you look at the worldwide community of project managers, is extremely small. I was just in Romania, in Bucharest, these past few days, and I gave a presentation entitled Architecting the Future Through Project Management. And I did some research, and depending on what organization you look at, there are potentially 51 million people, project managers or people working on projects around the world, 51 million. And PMI's latest membership count I saw just last month was 477,000, and we have roughly about maybe 800,000 PMPs. So we're small compared to the worldwide PMI community. So the opportunities are just unbelievable. Okay. We also have threats out there. That the threats being that there are other, I don't know if these are threats, but there are other organizations that want volunteers also, that they're vying for that talent and so on. The threat of not being able to obtain the right kind of leaders and volunteers. It is really important to do that SWOT analysis, and to do it maybe once or twice a year, but at least once a year, to help with the development of your strategic plan, so that you can see where you might need to do some additional work. Now, another thing that's important when it comes to any particular chapter is to make sure that everybody understands the vision and the mission. And, where do you want to be? Where should we be 1 year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years? Now, I know that a lot of chapters, one of their major objectives is to increase membership by X%. And that's a great objective, but, we have to really think about, in order to get members to come in, it's really not about setting quotas and things like that. It's really about, what we are perceived as an organization, what we do, how we add value to the community. So it's very important to kind of make sure that everybody, every leader, every volunteer leader, every person that's working on teams and things knows what the vision of the chapter would be, and also what their 1 to 3 year, maybe 5 year plan is. And also, it's a good idea to create that wish list. Where would we like to be? What would we like to be involved in? What would be great if we could do these things, so that we can then focus on priorities as to where we really want to be and when. The goal, of course, or part of the success strategy, is to align volunteers where they might best contribute their specific talents. I know from speaking to chapter leaders, and I've actually visited close to 70 PMI chapters worldwide. And so I've really gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of these chapter leaders. And in many cases, what you'll find is that, and it sounds funny, but they're looking for leaders that simply, or volunteers that simply have a heartbeat, they're breathing. And you know what? That's not the way to look at things. We have to look at people who have the right talent for the right job. Okay, so what we want to do is make sure that any of these volunteer assignments are going to do things that are not only valuable to the organization, but they're also valuable to the individual. And I think that, and I kind of highlighted this, connect assignments to feelings of self-worth. These are very important things. Now, before I go on, before I talk about more strategies and things like that, I just want to check and see, anybody have any comments, anything that you would like to offer in terms of suggestions, the experiences that you may have, any other items that you want to address? If you do, would you place them in the questions box? Okay, let's see. We have Holly said yes to something. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so yes, you can hear me. Okay. Any questions, observations from your perspective as a chapter leader or a leader of a non-for-profit type of organization? Anything that you might want to share regarding the issue of volunteers? And I'll be looking for those posts. Okay, so we have something here. Okay, Holly says, okay, right to understand the motivators of prospect volunteers and connect them to what's in it for them. Absolutely, yeah. What we want to do is, we have to do that. We as the leaders have to display tremendous enthusiasm. So one thing I can say is that Holly Ripley, she's the Vice President of Program for the New York City chapter, and Holly and her team probably have more energy than I've ever seen any group, and they are really, really committed to providing value to the chapter, and you can see that by the quality of the programs that they offer at the chapter meetings. So Holly, thank you very much for that. You know, I just when I see Holly speaking, she's always got a smile on her face. She seems to be so excited and just lit up by all these different things that she's doing for the chapter with her team. So what you need is more volunteers that are creating that high energy. Okay, and Holly and those of you that are on the call, if you're going to be in Phoenix, make sure you hook up and talk about these things during the Leadership Institute meeting. Okay, a critical factor. The experiences of your current volunteers will determine the level of difficulty in obtaining new volunteers. And that's probably the most important lesson learned here, and that is that if your volunteers are not having a good experience, then they're going to tell other people, and they're going to walk away, and it is going to be even more difficult to get new volunteers. So whatever you're doing, what stage you might be in your chapter in terms of programs, right now is a very good time to go back and ask your volunteers how are they doing, if they have any issues or concerns, and make sure that that you're addressing those concerns. It's just very important. Now, let's make sure that before we ask for volunteers, let's make sure that we know why we need them. I think that sometimes leaders get very, very enthusiastic. They're very, very excited about a program, and they want to jump right into it without actually figuring out what they need. And that is probably a very, very serious issue, because if you do not know how to get things started, if you don't really have a clear plan, if you're really not sure why you're doing it, and then bringing volunteers in, they're going to see confusion right up front, and they'll be disillusioned. So let's make sure that we articulate the need. Let's make sure that before we just simply ask people to volunteer, that we know why we need them, and we have to be very clear about it. Okay? This is a good one. I like the way this is stated. Volunteers diversify and expand the programs and services we can offer to our stakeholders. And that's something that you would say to the volunteers, you have a talent for, and then fill in the blank. You know, you have a talent for, you're very good at organizing. You're very good at planning out an event. You're very good at directing people, whatever it is. Make sure that you let them know what that particular skill is. Strategies also include that simply asking for volunteers is not enough. We need to know what their necessary skills are. Dealing with people, some people are excellent in technology, Every chapter needs a group of technologists. We need people who are good event planners and so on. Financial analysis, keep the chapter in the black in terms of finances. Let's make sure that we know that, or they know, the time commitments in terms of hours, days, and so on. And let's make sure we're honest. It says don't hold back here. Tell them like it is. We have to be very, very honest and upfront. And of course, some of the assignments are short in duration. Some are very long. Sometimes it's just one time and then you're done. Whatever it is, we have to explain all of that to our potential volunteers and leaders. We also have to take into consideration things like travel. If you are in a certain position, you're going to be on call. The president, the various directors on the boards, these are people who are going to be getting phone calls and questions from various members and organizations, so there is a certain element of that. The amount of email that you get, I don't know anybody that's not getting enough email, but when you take on the position as a chapter leader or volunteer, that you're going to be adding to your email workload. So these are all important things to think about. The one thing that I know is not being addressed well enough, it's just not, and that is getting backup for the volunteers and also having a succession plan. I can tell you from personal experience that it's just we're not putting enough effort there, and we need to focus more on it. Okay. Also, we have to be aware that some people are in more of a strategic planning position, and that would be the board. And then there would be people who are going to do the things for the chapter, and that would be operations. And we absolutely, positively have to find ways to separate them out. You cannot be strategically planning but then doing operations and tactical work at the same time. It's extremely difficult, and could have consequences later on. So let's talk about a recruitment plan, retention plan. Job descriptions, clearly defined job descriptions. Make sure that we get the word out there. Advertise needs. Not just say, well, we need volunteers. We have to say we need volunteers for these programs. And we might even want to say, and these programs do these things. But we have to do more than just simply put up a flag that says we need volunteers. Okay? Where do you get volunteers? Chapter meetings, depending on your chapter. I know chapters that have 350, 400 people attending their chapter meetings. The New Jersey chapter is an example of that. The Washington, D.C. chapter, where they're getting hundreds and hundreds of people. Make it attractive during these events, these networking events, and so on. Make sure that you have a good way to communicate your message. Again, not just we need volunteers, but we need people who will volunteer too or can help us with. Craft your message in a certain way. We also want to make sure that you have an interview process and screening, because people do step up to volunteer assignments and then they just walk away because they realize, oh, this is too much for me, I have family, I have work, and you know what, it leaves the chapter in a big problem. So let's do all this upfront work and get the right people. Let's make sure that we provide feedback. We should have some kind of success metrics and so on. And absolutely positively, how are you going to recognize them? Okay, they go to special meetings, dinners, and things like that. And I know volunteers shouldn't expect to get paid, but that doesn't mean that they should not get something in return for their time. So let's make sure that we do that. And of course, take the plan, make the plan work. Execute your plan, and then document all of the experiences. Okay. Look for the best people that you can. I just love this statement. Look for people who burn to be involved. There are people, believe it or not, who just would really love to, but they are not going to step up. You have to actually come up and talk to them and encourage them. Hand out a business card. We could really use someone with your talent, things like that. But you know what? There are people out there who are just waiting for an opportunity. Get background information. Set up appointments to talk to people, find out what their interests are, what motivates them. Anytime you're in a leadership position when you're speaking to volunteers, always make sure that you're looking at that big picture, and make sure, again, I will stress this multiple times, to define your expectations clearly and upfront. Let's not hide anything from anybody. Okay? There are benefits to being a volunteer. You are going to gain new skills. It's not an if, it's a absolute it will. Okay, you will gain new skills. You are going to increase your network. that you can have complimentary attendance at some of the PM events, that we have these volunteer-only events where we're going to make them feel special. Okay, you'll have knowledge sharing, mentoring. To tell you the truth, it's just a lot of good things. And you know what? It is definitely a nice addition to a resume to say that you had accomplished these things as a volunteer for an organization. Now, here's an opportunity for those of you that are on the call to just maybe share why did you volunteer in the first place. So let me just see if I can get any comments based on that. Okay. Anybody want to share? I became a volunteer because. Just to post something on the in the chat or the question section. Okay, I'm looking for anything. Just give me one reason why you volunteered. Holly says, I want to make a difference, and I know she is. She makes a difference all the time. She is definitely one of those bright stars in the chapter that does all these different things, and she's always got a smile on her face. But some of you out there, what do you do? I mean, why did you volunteer? I like to do it because, to tell you the truth, I've learned so much from it, and I don't think if it wasn't for PMI, I certainly wouldn't have traveled to all the places that I've traveled and met all the people that I've met, and done all the different things that I was able to do. Just like recently, I mean, they asked me to go and give a presentation in Bucharest, Romania. Earlier this year, I was in France for an entire week, meeting with chapters there. It's just amazing things. Okay. Bilal, great Bilal. I want to expand my network, make my contributions, and make things better for the chapter. And I know Bilal is doing that. He's got a lot of enthusiasm about it and great ideas for moving forward. I feel that enthusiasm. So what we need to do is we need to get more and more volunteers to not only volunteer, but to talk to people about why they volunteered in the first place. It's just really, really critical. Okay. When you're talking about expectations, I know that this is something that and it doesn't really affect only a volunteer type organization like PMI chapters, but any organization. What I am finding is that people in general, especially managers, are really clearly not sitting down and speaking to their people and setting expectations. It is not that difficult, and to tell you the truth, it is a requirement. In order for you to be successful, you have to be able to articulate your expectations, and you also have to obtain the expectations of the people that you work for. It's a two-way street. Some things like the work assignments that you do, the time required, and we have to be honest about how much time. Is it hours per week? Is it 1 day per week? Is it two days per month? How long are you going to do it? Who will be involved? Who will support? The expectations would be that you have to respond back at certain times. There are meetings that you have to attend. But let's be sure that we set the expectations and people understand what has to be done. There might be some training involved. There may be specific deliverables that are required. And we have to talk about the tangible and the intangible benefits associated with it. Okay, your tangible benefits as a volunteer would be the actual this experience of learning and becoming a stronger leader, that you're creating things that are beneficial to the chapter, including the generation of revenue and the generation of content. Those would be more tangible benefits. But then the intangible benefits would be the feeling of personal self-worth, personal brand, prestige associated with it, things like that. So we just want to make sure that the people who step up to these positions understand that it isn't all work, that there is reward, there is return, and it's for the organization as well as the individual. Now, another thing that we probably don't do well, and that is look at the risks. There are risks and liabilities when you bring on volunteers. We have to be very clear about the position that they're going into, how much exposure they're going to have to the public, to the members, to sponsors, and so on. I don't know, in my past experience, there have been some situations where volunteers have created some serious issues for the chapter that involved legal activities. So what we want to do is make sure that we are picking the right volunteers, that we understand that there is risk, and that we want to go through the process of interviewing and talking to these volunteers and making sure that they understand what the chapter expects of them, the behaviors, professionalism, and so on, and also the idea of having a backup for a volunteer who might have to leave because of an illness, a family situation, a job change. We need to have a backup plan. So there's a number of things that we need to do from a risk perspective. Okay, and also another thing that's important, which I think that a lot of people sometimes forget, is that we do have bylaws, and our bylaws tell us that there are certain things that we can do, can't do, and have to follow a process. And if we go outside of those bylaws, we become liable to a lot of potentially damaging situations. Here's a description for volunteers, okay? And it's just a template, but you know what? It's very useful. It's very straightforward, and it will help to get people to understand what they might be, accepting in terms of a position. The title, the purpose, clearly defined responsibilities, if there's going to be any training, the specific deliverables provided, your time commitment, qualifications, and benefits. I think all these are important. We do not have to create pages and pages and pages of job description. Let's just be very, very clear, right to the point. This is what we're asking you to do. Can you step up to it? And it's our responsibility to make sure that we are asking the right questions and we are getting the right people because we have the right job descriptions described. Now, there are categories of volunteers, okay? If you really think about your organization, you have people who are currently volunteering. There are people who are interested but are not actively engaged right now. There are people who have no idea or understanding what volunteering is. There are people who will never volunteer ever. There are people you really don't want as volunteers. And then there are volunteers who aspire to lead. And we really need to take a look at what's out there and make sure that we understand. And this is actually kind of part of the screening process. We really do need to know which groups we should be spending time with. Those who are interested in volunteering but are not actively engaged, there are probably hundreds of them out there, maybe thousands. And what we need to do is we need to find ways to make the volunteering very, very attractive to them. So how do we get visibility? Setting the stage. Okay, outreach programs. Many chapters do have outreach programs. The New York City chapter has a great outreach programs, an awful lot going on there. Affiliations with other professional organizations. Public relations or some kind of a marketing program where we're getting out there and just sending information about, hey, this is what we do. Brochures, things like that. We have to create and maintain a very, very positive image, which means professionalism, making sure that we have good quality programs and things like that. And, think about not just the officers and the leaders, but think about members. Who do the members connect with throughout an entire year? Why can't we use the membership in some way as a method or a vehicle to get the word out about PMI? Now, not every member is going to be a volunteer, okay? But every member could be an ambassador for your chapter. You got to think of them as people who you'd want them to go back to your organization and say, wow, I was just at this meeting, this chapter did this. As a matter of fact, today, the New York City chapter has organized a wine tour through Long Island. And I think that as of yesterday, they only had 4 seats left, so they're almost sold out. Now, there you go. I mean, here's like a social aspect, a fun aspect. And you know what? We need more of those kinds of things. If possible, connect with community boards, maybe even the local PTAs or something like that, and maybe start to think about getting children involved in project management through the Educational Foundation. There are civic organizations. Take the time to have brainstorming sessions during chapter meetings where we can get people to come up with ideas. If you had 100 people attend a chapter meeting and you spent 5 minutes on brainstorming ideas, I'm sure that you will get many very, very interesting ideas. So look at those as possible ways of doing it. Here are some techniques for recruiting. And, I don't think that many PMI chapters are using the media like TV, radio, newspapers, but you know what? It's a great idea. Use the internet. Get some YouTube videos out there about the benefits of joining your chapter. Obtain opportunities to speak in public and at programs. The latest thing I did was back in June for the chapter. I met with the Federal Reserve Board, and we talked about the chapter and what the chapter does. Kind of like it was a corporate outreach thing, but it actually was meeting with a group of people that were not necessarily very well connected or even knew about PMI. Create slide presentations such as this one that you can share across lots of organizations. Get mailing events out, do fairs. We have career fairs and career networking sessions and breakfast roundtables, brochures. The thing here of all of these items is that the big item, don't assume that everyone knows your chapter is there. There are thousands and thousands of people who have no idea what PMI is. In New York City, I teach a lot of classes for project management, and when I ask people, are you familiar with PMI, I might have a class of 15 to 20, maybe 25 people, and maybe one person raises their hand and says, yep, I know about PMI. How is that possible in New York City or Atlanta or Chicago or LA or any place like that where people don't know anything about PMI? We need to reach out more. We need to reach out more. Tips for success. Now this part here, this is pretty much about the leadership, okay? Prepare the newly appointed leader. Okay, communicate your expectations. This is you as the established leader in the chapter, helping to coach the new leader. Make sure the volunteer leader can commit to the time. Start slowly. Don't inundate people too much right off the bat. We'll scare them away. Encourage the volunteer to seek support and get a mentor, an internal chapter mentor, and provide some guidance about procedures and bylaws. Okay, let me just see if there's any comments that I can address in the questions. So let me take a look. Okay. Expand. Okay, so Bill Al. Okay, to shepherd people and remind them their project work is best practice. Okay, so Holly had made a comment about making sure that people understand the work that they do. We use best practices in project management. We make sure people are aware of their value to the chapter. There's just a number of things that we can do here to help people get engaged. Okay, let me just take a look at our chat here. This week our chapter tapped into the few people who were attending their first PMI meeting. They welcomed the volunteering role at the meetings because they didn't know people yet. A task may be easier than small talk. Maybe easier than small talk for new members. That's a good point. Let's not just do small talk and chat. Why don't we say, hey, we have an opening here. You're new to the chapter. This is a great way to network. Why don't we do that? Okay, so let's look for these opportunities where we can engage people right away. And to tell you the truth, I think it's a great idea to tap into the new person just coming on board who might be very impressed by the meeting, the speaker, things like that, and they're kind of like building up their enthusiasm right away. It'd be a great time to get them engaged. Now, for the seasoned leader, let's make sure that you become a mentor, that you have to maintain a very high level of enthusiasm. You want to make sure that you're communicating often. I use the term communicate relentlessly. Okay, you have to be available, and you can't allow too many gaps to form between you and your connection to PMI. An important thing, as an example, okay, the Leadership Institute meeting. It's a one-year event, one time a year event. It's going to be in Phoenix this year, and we expect 1,000 or more PMI leaders from around the world to be there in Phoenix. And there will be 2.5 or maybe 3 days of people networking and talking about ideas and being excited. And then you know what happens? Within a few days of those folks leaving the meeting, what happens is they go back to business as usual. They don't reach out. They don't talk to the people that they exchange business cards with. And they don't hear from them again for an entire year. Now, we can't do that. It's just like in the chapter. There can't be this gap month to month. I'm only going to attend this one meeting, and then I don't talk to anybody for an entire month. We have to be available, okay? And that's part of setting the expectations and also making sure that we show that enthusiasm. Okay, make sure that we explain what's needed from the volunteer, provide opportunities so that they can do the work. We don't want to have over-supervision of these folks. Give them a chance to do the work and then talk to them about it. Okay, look for any way that you can provide training or mentoring or feedback. And if you have some subject matter expert somewhere, get them involved. Use their expertise to help people to learn more. Okay? Let's make sure that we're very good at setting our priorities and things that are in terms of urgency and importance. Okay? We have chapter best practices and processes, many of which we're probably not using. Let's make sure that we as the leaders are doing those things, using those processes. One of the major emphases is to balance your time. You have a volunteer life, you have a personal life, you have a business life, and we have to make sure that we help people, and we have to make sure we do it ourselves. Balance our time extremely well. Maintain professionalism. If you get into trouble, if you start to see that you've overextended, you got to reach out. You got to ask for help, and that means that the entire team of leaders and volunteers, they have to be very, very collaborative, work together, and form a bond so that they're always helping each other. And of course, as leaders, we should always be focusing on that big picture. Patience is a key in PMI, or probably most volunteer organizations. Things don't happen as quickly as we would like, so let's make sure that we have some patience there. But we also have to be, occasionally aggressive. There will be setbacks and there are going to be delays, and the strong leaders understand that, and they will take the time to look for the alternatives, and they'll have some kind of a backup plan. Above all, probably more than anything, is recognize your team as often as possible, but don't do it lightly. Make sure that your recognition is sincere. It's pointed, it's specific. That is one of the best ways to keep people engaged, is to show your sincerity about your appreciation. Okay, that will create that loyalty. It will allow people to want to contribute new ideas. Make sure that you provide a certain amount of opportunity to be creative, and above all, this should not be a job. You should be having some fun with this. I know that there's work involved, but you should enjoy doing this, and it should be fun. Okay, it is a commitment, and we have to make sure that everybody knows this is a commitment. Okay, once you volunteer, you're not really a volunteer anymore. You have work to do, and we want to make sure that we make that commitment. It's not going to be easy all the time. It's going to take time. It definitely requires patience. It is absolutely rewarding. It is, without volunteers, we're not going to have PMI or PMI chapters, and we absolutely need teamwork to sustain it. So these are all the things that we should be doing. And then the last part here really is, what can you do to encourage collaboration, improve the level of participation within, and increase the perceived value of your chapter? Okay, so let's think about that. Okay, not only in the chapter, but in your own organization. Let's bring project management to higher levels of awareness. Okay, what can you do to do that? Okay, we want to make sure that they see PMI, they see project management, they see the project manager as absolutely something that we can't do without, that they're valuable to the organization. And PMI uses the term to make project management indispensable for business results. And I think that my addition to that is that we should be making the project manager indispensable for business results. Make yourself indispensable. So let's keep this good thing going. Let's get into succession planning. Really think about who's your backup. Okay, let's get some new officers out there. Encourage the leaders to step up. Make sure that you're setting an example by this active leadership, and make a difference. And I know that the people that are on here are making a difference. Let's go out there and reach out to other people and convince them to, whatever they're doing as a leader, be more visible, step up, and it's not just a job. This is something that you want to do because you really like it, and without having these leaders and these volunteers, we certainly wouldn't have a successful chapter. Make sure you celebrate your successes all the time, even the small ones. Incremental successes are great, and make sure that people get that appreciation. And last words, International Project Management Day coming up in November, 6th of November. If you're not doing something, do something. Try to do something, even if it's a small event. Maybe it's just a coffee break in one of your organization. Maybe you could take just a few minutes and thank your project managers at a November chapter meeting. It doesn't have to be on November 6th, but take the time to get people to appreciate the value of the project manager. We have lots of ways to do that, but it's very important that you get people to understand. I still believe that it is the unappreciated profession, and I still say, and I've said this even in Romania, I asked the question, says, when you ask a child what they want to be when they grow up, how many of them say, I want to be a project manager? And the answer is probably none. But project management can be one of the coolest jobs around. The amazing things that project managers do, and as the Educational Foundation says, you are gaining life skills. So let's find a way to somehow connect with your people on International Project Management Day. Take 5 minutes, okay, and make it happen. As far as PDUs, we got a PDU for today. It's a Category B, obtaining and sustaining volunteer leaders. You can go to PMI website. This is the information that you need. 1 PDU, Category B. The process groups, initiating, planning, executing, and the knowledge areas, communications and human resources, is pretty much for any organization that is involved in gaining volunteers. Okay, and so if you have an opportunity, go to the website, put in your PDU, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. If there's any questions that you might have, now's a good time for that. And I'll just open that up. Okay, so anybody, any questions at all, any comments? Hope you enjoyed the presentation. I am not sure if I can elevate you to a microphone, but if there's anybody that's interested in saying a word or two, I will see if we can make that happen.
Sure, Frank, we can unmute any attendees if they want to have an interaction.
Okay, that's great. So anybody, questions, comments, suggestions? I think one of my good friends, John Watson, was on the call here a little while ago. So John, would you like to, John is a regional mentor as far as I know. John, any suggestions, comments? You want to make a few statements?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, now, I am not a region mentor anymore, Frank. Thank you for recognizing that. I rolled off the end of last year. I did send a comment in under your question line a moment ago. First of all, thank you for putting this together. I think you did an excellent job. You brought up a ton of good points. One of the last things I just sent off to you was a moment ago to a lot of people. You know, we can't wait till election time to start looking for new people. I think one of the important rules for any volunteer leader is to begin at the beginning of their term to start building their bench. Get some directors to help them. It helps you find your successor, because working with them throughout the year, it builds you an automatic transition and succession plan. And, you know, you talked about before, a lot of chapters, you know, we have very minimal requirements, pulse and breathing. And I'm not so sure that's such a great qualification, plus the fact that we get a person like that, chances are they're not going to be what we need, and they're going to let the team down, and it's going to be a toxic leakage throughout the organization. And that doesn't bode well for seeing absent members seeing team members not participating and absent. And you know, you need to have a full participant board being there, and you need to be having fun, and you need to be showing that you're having fun and getting things done. And I don't think anybody in our organization is afraid of hard work. And you also have a lot more fun when you're getting things done. You know, one thing I think is really important. You know, and you made a good comment about that. You know, we jump in, start doing things. You know, we need to really be focused on why we're doing these things. Have clear direction for everything that we're doing, and everything that we bring a volunteer in for. Too many times I've seen in chapters, I call it dump and run. Bring a volunteer in, dump them on something, and run and leave them alone. Volunteers should never be left alone. They should realize and recognize they have a team, a group of people to support them in whatever endeavors they're trying to take on. I should probably cut off because I could go as long as you are, Frank, because I'm passionate about this subject, nearly as passionate about this subject as you are.
Well, you know, John, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we've had lots of discussions about the volunteer issue, and the point that you just made is really critical, and I think that we all have to step up to it a little bit more, and that is that the succession planning actually needs to start as soon as you begin your assignment, not when you're getting ready to end it, and we're going to have to do a much better job of that. And one of the people in my chapter, Karen Fox, who was a past president, was very vocal about that, about succession planning and so on. And I've just pretty much stepped up to that responsibility that we have to do that. And it's every chapter leader is going to have to do that, and we have to do that early on, and we're going to have to show that real excitement, that enthusiasm. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to happen. One of the things that I think that everyone on the call here might be interested in, if you haven't done this, okay, PMI has 2 publications. They're both entitled Chapter Leadership Essentials, and then one is called the PMI Chapter Leaders Guide, Volunteer Role Delineation Study Results, first edition, and PMI Chapter Leaders Guide, Strategies for Onboarding and Transitioning. And I've been carrying these things around with me and reading them and realizing that we probably, and I'm not just talking about New York City, I'm talking about PMI in general as far as the chapters go, are probably not spending enough time looking at these types of documents, which is outlining all of the things that we should be doing and giving us a framework to build from. So it's extremely important that we take the time to look at those things that we are responsible for and get that succession planning going early. Bilal or Holly or Karen or Reinhold, anybody have any comments they'd like to add, any questions before we close? Hopefully you enjoyed the session. So we opened up the microphones.
Hey, Frank, can I add?
Yes.
Frank. Hey, one more thing about that transition and succession planning. I've been dealing with a lot of chapters, and this transition and succession planning document PMI has put out is a wonderful document, and it gets, bragged, try to make an awareness of it continually. But it is amazing to me how many chapters are not even aware that exist, and they're out there developing their own transition and succession planning. We don't have much time as volunteers, and if we can, borrow somebody else's wheel, rearrange a few spokes, and tweak it for our personal needs is great, but PMI has got a great document for transition and succession. I was working with a chapter just this week who has one of the best transition and succession planning and vetting processes I've seen, but they have never seen this transition and succession guide, and they totally and fully embraced it. So it goes back to beginning your volunteer recruitment at the beginning, you're building your bench early, but look at that transition and succession document when you start. Are you getting what you need to be successful at your job? And if you're to hand over your job, do people know what you're doing? It's not exactly like you're going to be telling them exactly how to do everything, but the things they need to do to be efficient at their role. But
well, John, I think that what I'll do is, I mentioned it here, but I think what I'll do is I'm going to add a little bit of these items into this presentation and show them the source so that they can go there and get these kinds of things. Because you're right, I have to tell you, I'm pretty sure that many PMI chapter leaders don't know half of the documentation and tools that are out there that we can be using.
Yeah, the good news and bad news about PMI, they have a ton of stuff that's out there, and it's hard to find.
Yeah, we're going to make that easier to find. Bilal, Holly, Karen, Reinhold, any comments, questions, additions you'd like to make? Did you enjoy the information? Is it useful?
Yeah, this is Bilal, Frank. Yeah, it was a pretty good webinar, and one of the things I wanted to add was that I sort of like shamelessly plug the chapter at any of my classes I'm taking at NYU in project management. And like you said, a lot of these people, a lot of folks don't know that we exist. So I sort of like say, hey, we're here. We got some good opportunities to volunteer once you become a member. And some people do show interest. Some people, unfortunately, say, what are you talking about? But most of the time from the people I've come across is that they will like to join the chapter. They will like to, learn more about what we do as an organization and how we help the PMs here in the New York City area. So I do try to do that. In my own teams, I do have a couple of people who are really enthusiastic about doing their volunteer work and would really like to learn, step up in the future when they get the opportunity. So I like some of that, and I encourage that among all my teams that if you have any ideas to make this thing to make our work better in communication where I do, and just bubble them up to me. You don't have to go through anyone else. Just shoot me an email, give me a call, and we'll talk about it. So.
So what you're doing is you're basically doing what I think is a good idea, and that's being the ambassador for the chapter and for PMI for lots of different organizations. So one thing that I would ask you everyone to do is I know that Saturday morning is a tough time to do a webinar, but I figured there might be some people before they started their day might be interested in, and we're going to run this again on 7:30 Monday evening. And I will be willing to run it again if we can get more interest. You know, I sent it out to quite a few chapters. I got some responses back that Monday evening seemed to be more convenient than Saturday. So pass this information on to other people, your volunteers, people that might be interested in, and get them to sign up for it. 1 hour investment is a great opportunity to hear more about this and to get people more involved in this whole idea of the whole process of volunteering. I think, Reinhold, you have a comment or a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for the webinar. I think it is one of the greatest needs of PMI to develop our volunteer base. I really liked your idea about new members. We probably have, on the monthly basis, we're a small chapter in Savannah, Georgia, but we probably have 2 or 3 new people that come every month and maybe not come again. And that is really a great time to engage them because they do show up. They are enthusiastic, and so that's a really good takeaway from me for this session is to really value that new individual and to have a way to ease them into the chapter so they can see where they fit in. I had breakfast yesterday morning with a gentleman that I found out, I didn't even know it, but he's teaching PMI classes for a local university, and he's not even PMI certified. So he's like, yeah, that's really something that I would like to do. And he wasn't even aware of PMI really. So there is a need out there, and I'm going to take that away as an action item from today's call. So thanks for presenting.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to make this presentation available. If you want the actual slide deck, send me an email on that. I had done this originally at a PMI Leadership Institute meeting. I think that it was maybe 5 years ago where I actually addressed this as a workshop. So this content is actually part of a full-blown, like 3-hour workshop on developing your abilities to recruit, retain volunteers and volunteer leaders. So if anybody has any need for that, send me an email. Okay, Holly, any questions before we close? Any comments? I praise Holly a lot. She's probably going to be mad at me and embarrassed, but she does a tremendous amount of work, and she's so energetic that I had to have some good words for her.
Oh, thanks, Frank. This is extremely helpful. I would love to share the presentation with my team members, and I really appreciate that you got granular in some of the tactics of how we should, maybe refocus on the volunteers and how to incent them, really connecting the understanding what they want to get out of volunteering and then match the needs from our side. I think that's key, because when you have a match on both sides, the needs and the wants, it's, in that these volunteers are then shepherded in the right direction with enthusiasm, genuine enthusiasm. That's a good recipe for success.
I think you're right, and please share this with your volunteers and other folks that you think might be interested in, and also let them know. Send out that invitation. I'm going to send the invitation for the Monday one. I'll get that out this morning. It'll have a different registration number and so on. But let's see if we can get more people to step up to this as leaders of these chapters. Especially, I had focused on New York City chapter. We really need to get more people in leadership volunteer positions stepping up, and I think that at least this is one way to do that. And I did purposely put this into a more detailed approach, so it was a little granular, because I want you to be able to use this as a document. And I will also mention those 2 other documents from PMI, both the chapter leaders guide, volunteer role, and strategies for onboard and transitioning. So thank you very much for all of you for being here and for joining, and pass the word on. I will get the next notice out this morning so that you can pass it on to anyone who might be interested in other chapters for that matter, you know, New Jersey, Long Island, what might be interested. But what I'd really like to see, at least my goal is to get some more of the PMI New York City people, especially our current volunteers, to join in and listen and gain some information from it. So to Bilal and Holly, John, Karen, and Reinhold, thank you for being here, and a special thanks to Kay Weiss, my partner for lots and lots of PMI activities and project management things. Kay is an extremely good friend of mine. She is I know she was past board member for the Rochester, Minnesota chapter, but I think that she's also back on the board. Is that true, Kay?
Yep, back on the board again, just as of this August, actually, and enjoying it very much. So, yeah, thanks for the program. I learned a lot, too.
Okay, if you go to Phoenix, make sure you meet up with Kay. She's going to be there at the LIM. She's got a wealth of information, a true project management professional, somebody that I absolutely positively enjoy speaking with and working with all the time. So anyway, thank you all for being here today. Remember, we're going to do it again Monday evening at 7:30. The word will go out. If you want the actual deck, not just the recording, but the actual deck, send me an email and I'll send that directly to you. Kay did record this. We'll do it again Monday, and if we get enough enthusiasm and we want it, we'll do it again. And there will be other webinars that are associated with this for the purpose of growing the skills of volunteer leaders, especially the PMI chapter leaders. So be on the lookout for more of these webinars. And again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day and the weekend. Okay? Take care.